Ewelina, Kurtys, welcome to the podcast.
Hello. Nice to be
It's
here.
great to have you on. It's exciting. And you're calling in from the UK today, right?
Yes, I live close to Cambridge in the UK, in England.
Very good. What's so exciting about today, you hear so much about needing more energy for AI, but not too many people are talking about how can we fix that problem. I think maybe it's the biggest problem we have is AI is consuming vast amounts of electricity. And I think we have really two options. We can build more electricity, build more energy, which is certainly a need for the short term. But in the long run, if we can make AI more efficient and need less energy, that would be a huge game changer. So it sounds like you and your team are working on that. And I think the audience will be excited to learn more.
Yes, the mission of Final Spark, the startup about which we will talk today, is to build computers from living neurons. From the neurons, the same as we have in our heads, and we want to use them to process information because neurons are 1 million times more energy efficient than digital hardware. So this is why we want to have this dream of using them as a part of computer, which will be called biocomputer. So that's the objective.
Wow. So like a brain. I know we have neurons. So you're telling me that this brain that I have is more efficient than the computers?
Oh yeah, definitely. You can run all day on the banana. And to actually simulate your brain, we would need a small nuclear plant. So there were some estimations done by researchers which are independent from us. And there is a lot of reasoning behind why neurons are more efficient. They process information in totally different way than digital computers and in time and space. And they can also process analog signal. They have much more connections than digital neural networks. So all these things lead to the fact that they are so energy efficient. But actually, we don't try to build the brain. That's important. We just use building blocks of the brain, which is neurons. So it's like a bricks. You can have a house, or you can build a bridge or something else. So it's important that we don't try to build human brain in the lab. It would be very difficult. I would say impossible. But we just want to use the same building blocks because we know for sure from nature that they are able to process information very efficiently.
Very cool. That's amazing. So tell me about your background. How did you get into this? How do you know so much about this? What kind of education do you need to be able to study this area?
So actually, I'm coming more from biology side. So I studied pharmacy and biotechnology in Poland, where I come from. After I did a PhD in the Netherlands in brain imaging, and I was always fascinated with brain. I thought it's the coolest topic if you want to do biomedical research. So I followed that, and I was also really fascinated with imaging, with all the non-invasive methods when you can look inside the brain without opening it. It's really fascinating. And later I did some research in London, and I always also wanted to leave academia at some point. And I was curious what is outside in the real world. So I left to work with startups. And my first job was with a startup, with a small company, which was doing some services on medical imaging analysis. Because in industry, you have huge amount of data, also from medical trials. When you try to, for example, figure out new drugs, you do some research also with the medical imaging, and you have a lot of images to analyze. So this is how I learned about AI, because there is a lot of data there and a lot of push to use AI to make it faster and more, and also to figure out more information from the images. And then I realized that actually by looking, I was going to many meetups, conferences. I was at the time in London. It was perfect place for networking, really cool, and for learning about AI. And I realized that it's much more than imaging, medical imaging. There's much more possibilities. That was time before ChatGPT. But still, people had so many different ideas on how you can build AI models. And then I became so fascinated with this that I set up my own company. I started to work as a consultant on commercial applications of artificial intelligence, which was a really cool and interesting topic because neural networks, artificial ones, digital AI is kind of inspired by the human brain, at least at the beginning. However, later I started to work on even future, let's say, not the current AI, but the future of AI, which is Final Spark, which I also actually, I met the founders also at one of the conferences in London when they were presenting their work, the idea of building computer from living neurons. And that is actually perfect combination for me because that's combination of neuroscience, that's where I come from, my roots, my education, let's say, where I feel safe, and engineering, what I discovered when I was working in industry. So that's very cool combination. So that's my background. However, I think that to work on biocomputing, what we talk today, on making computational living neurons, I think it's much more important to have some background in coding and maybe some mathematics, some signal processing. Actually, the founders, Fred and Martin, they have PhD in signal processing, and I think that's the heart of the problem here, because it's all about analyzing the signal. That's the biggest challenge of this project. Although there are a lot of stuff also on biology side which are very important, but I think like what we really try to figure out is how to program neurons. And to figure out this, you have to understand somehow, analyze the signal which you get from neurons, which is in the form of spikes, or maybe it can be continuous, a little bit continuous signal, or estimation of a continuous signal, and you try to search for some patterns. And you also send some signals to neurons. So that's more mathematics and data science, I would say, for really the work on biocomputing.
Amazing. I mean, it sounds like a real deep area. You've got
Yes, it's
you
very
talked
deep tech. Yes.
deep tech, super deep tech, and you've got 6 people on your team today. It sounds like the founders have put in capital. It sounds like
Yes.
I would
Yes.
imagine that this area is one of the biggest areas for investors to be thinking about, because
Yes.
how else can you scale AI if you can't make it more efficient?
Absolutely. And the inspirations from human brain are really important and they are used already. So there are many ideas already in the industry, and some startups also, which are using some learnings from how brain works to improve digital AI. Some people also work, they try to make AI more like brain, which is a field of neuromorphic computing. There is also a lot of progress there. And the even step further is to use real living neurons, which is biocomputing. This is such a radical step towards inspiring by the human brain.
Incredible. So this is a little off the topic, but to me, okay, how did the brain get to be what it is? How did the
Mhm.
human brain, I mean, you probably
Mhm.
know a lot more about the brain than 99.9% of people. How did the brain get so amazing, so efficient?
Well, through evolution, definitely. And I think through interaction with the environment, because this is how our generally cognitive system works, that we interact with the environment, we get feedback, and then we adjust, hopefully. That's called learning. And that's actually how I think everything works. Also in the evolution, because you have also interaction with the environment and organism, they adjust, they adapt. And brain, I think making a brain is also like developing a brain is also part of this adaptation, because as we can see, humans dominated the world. So actually it's not muscles, it's not speed, but actually the brain which made us to dominate everything. So I think it's just made, it's part of the evolution. It's very, very fine. And there's a lot of many fine structures in the brain, so it's very complex. That's why we, of course, don't try to reproduce the brain in the lab. And neurons are also itself very complex as cells. So even today, nobody really made a good model of neurons, which would be really working the same way as living neuron. So all the mathematical or all the in silico models of neurons are always simplification, which actually what is the purpose of model is some kind of simplification of the world, but nobody really can build real living neuron in digital. So it's much more complex. Biology is really complex. Cells have a lot of structures, they have membrane, there is a lot of stuff going on every neuron, so there is many states possible. So it's not like in neural network, you just have to pass some threshold maybe. There is some limit number of states, but in neuron, even one neuron has enormous number of states, so that's all can be used to encode information. So yes, so it's very, very complex, and that's why maybe it's efficient.
Is right, the level of complexity, but it becomes so efficient. So it sounds like you guys are studying a lot of different areas. You mentioned signal
Mhm.
processing, biology, different areas of your team of 6 people. Can you maybe walk us through like what are the areas of expertise of the team and of each person?
Yes, so the founders have a PhD in signal processing, and they found already another company which is digital technology. So they are experts in how to make digital stuff a lot, and they learned biology from the scratch. So that's really impressive that they had this energy, to start new topic, which is very challenging. I know it because I also learned about AI after I had already some expertise, for example, on neuroscience. So it's always it's difficult, and you have to be very strongly motivated to do this, to switch the fields. And then we have also Jean-Marc. He's an engineer. He's physicist by background. Perfect also background for this kind of problems because there's a lot of physics also. And he's building all the hardware. And he's also excellent programmer. So he's really very good person. And he was a first employee. And actually one of the reasons why Final Spark started to work with living neurons, because initially the company was founded in 2014 with the goal to build thinking machine, but the founders realized that digital thinking machine cost too much, and they realized they have to figure out something else. And one of the reasons why they switched to living neurons was because Jean-Marc has had already some experience with living neurons. He had a chance to do a project with Professor Markram, who is very famous neuroscientist. He works in Switzerland, and he's very famous in electrophysiology, and he also started a big brain project, which was huge European project. So yes, that was good start to learn from him. And then Final Spark, these 3 engineers, and they started to learn from biologists how to build a lab, how to culture cells. Then actually later Flora joined our team. She's a real biologist, and now we have someone seriously taking care on the cells. And then she's also playing with different type of neurons because we have different ideas how to combine neurons because brain is very complex and not all the neurons are the same. So there's also a question how to combine them to make them learn, to make them process information better. And then now we have also Gregorio. Gregorio is more from mathematics background, and he's currently doing PhD, which is partly funded by the Final Spark. He's doing a lot of experiment, I would say mainly software and data analysis, very mathematically heavy. So that's what he's doing. And then there's also me. I have PhD, as I said, in neuroscience, but I switched to commercial work. I got fascinated by that when I started to work in industry. So I take care about commercial work, which is including talking to podcasters also, because we want to
Very
promote the
good.
topic. Yes. And actually, the main reason why we want to promote the topic, because it's new, we want that more people know about biocomputing. Actually, the main reason is because we want that investors are not surprised when they hear about this.
Interesting. And I think you said you guys are based in Switzerland, but you're in the UK.
Yes, I am the only person remote. That's exception. Generally, Final Spark has a quite strict policy about being on site because it's very important for innovation. Actually, when you do R&D, then you have to be there. You have to interact with people. So all our team or technical stuff are done on site in Vevey in Switzerland. However, what is really interesting, during COVID, we a little bit modified our lab because it was not possible to go there all the time. So our engineers made this available remotely so that all the experiments, everything could be run from home. So you can access the lab via internet browser, write a Python script in programming language Python. You can plan an experiment, when and how neurons will be stimulated, how you will collect the data and when, and you can do all the data analysis, everything remotely, because also everything in the lab is automated. And because of this, we decided to use this chance to also offer access to others and to collaborate with scientists from all over the world. So we currently have 10 universities, because we currently accepted another one. We have 10 universities from all over the world who have free access to our lab, and they can play with neurons. They can try to collaborate with us. They have different ideas. We selected very carefully those who had some ideas about which we didn't think about. That's something what we're always looking for. We're always looking for something we didn't think about before. And we went even step further. So we also have first clients, commercial clients who pay us to get access to our lab to do some remote experiments with the neurons. Of course, you cannot really process any information yet. It's rather for fundamental research on how it works, how neurons process
Interesting.
signals.
Yeah, as I hear you talking about this, and the commercial clients, I think about, for example, Neuralink, a
Mhm.
company of Elon, where they're, I guess, putting electronic devices inside people's bodies to help them recover from various types of difficulties or challenges. Have you looked at
Yes.
that at all? Is that a potential application, or is that kind of as let's say a tangential area that's not exactly what you guys are doing?
Well, our focus is to build a biocomputer, so it's general purpose computer, and we don't aim to interact with human body at all. It's more to build a device. However, the knowledge from our research can be used in many ways. So it can be used in brain machine interface. It could be used by Neuralink because Neuralink has to understand also the signals from the brain, what they mean, in order to transform them into actions. And actually, that's something what is at core of our work because we try to figure out in vitro what does it mean when neuron is active, how they encode information. So that can be very helpful. And also, interestingly, our whole laboratory could be great tool for drug development and also for studying the mechanism of action of some brain diseases because it's very efficient platform. It works 24 hours per day, 7 days a week. It's the only one to our knowledge like that with living neurons. And you can run a lot of experiments in electrophysiology because generally trying to figure out the electrical signals from living tissue, from living neurons or sometimes muscles is electrophysiology. So this is a field in biomedical research which you can use also for drug development and for understanding the diseases. So there is a lot of potential applications which can be kind of like a side effect of the project, but it's not our objective. We focus on building computer.
Okay, interesting. Now you mentioned interpreting the signals or in vitro
Mhm.
uh, construction of neurons, and then those signals go out, and it's mind-boggling. Have you figured out how those signals are transmitted and how they're interpreted and how they work?
Well, we know quite a lot about processing of the signal, but we know very little about encoding. So actually nobody really knows. That's why we do a lot of experiments which are trial and error and we try to figure out how can we affect the behavior of neurons. So for example, how can we increase electrical activity or decrease such a very simple stuff. But we don't really can translate some specific signals to some specific knowledge. So that's really difficult. And in neuromorphic computing, for example, which is a field where you use artificial stuff to mimic neurons, so not living neurons, people often try to hard code. So they say, okay, this frequency means this knowledge, this information, another frequency, another information, but this is hard coded. That's not really how it works. And it's very, very difficult to figure out what stands behind the spikes of neurons. That's uh,
Yeah, it's incredible.
that's the
So
biggest challenge of the project.
the information goes out, it's encoded, but breaking that code, is it like an algorithm? It's just like
Absolutely.
the most
Yes.
advanced algorithm there ever is, and no computer can break it?
Yes, and actually, it's maybe I don't know if it's most advanced, but for sure it's different. And what is here a challenge? It's like with quantum computing. When you have totally new hardware, you also have to figure out new framework for coding for anything. So the way how you code neurons is different than how you code silicon. So that's really challenge. So you just
Wow,
have to
amazing.
we have to find out something what will be different way of thinking also. That's why it's necessary today when you work with living neurons. Of course, you have to know some neuroscience also. Something about neurons you have to know, yes, in order to
It's
interact with them.
incredible. So you may be figuring out the most important secret in the universe, right? Is this
Yes,
algorithmic interpretation, because it seems to me that is it's it just points to a very extreme level of intelligence to develop that kind of encryption
yes,
system,
of
let's
course.
say, that we can't figure out how to break. That's just incredible to think about. So, before we go too deep on those you know, big questions, I'd love to hear, you guys are 6 people, you're looking for investors. Have you just started your process? Who do you think is you'd like to be talking to? Maybe it's US investors in this area. There seem to be a lot that are focused on it, but anybody that you think would be ideal to work with you guys.
Well, the best investor is this one which has the money. That's absolutely necessary. We are searching for 50 millions. And what is a challenge? 50 million Swiss francs, which is more or less $50 million. And what is a challenge here is because it's a long-term investment, because we envision that once we start to work with investor, we will build biocomputer in 10 years, which is quite a long time. Especially today, investors are even more afraid of the long-term projects, I've heard, because of the LLMs, which will change totally the market. So some people are afraid even in 3 or 5 years, this is already long. So 10 years, it's a long. So that's the biggest challenge. But perfect investor is someone who has the money, who is able to take a risk. So it has to be someone with a lot of money, not the only 50 millions, because otherwise you shouldn't risk. So because it's always high risk investment, of course, it's deep tech, long-term project. So there is always some risk involved. However, the potential rewards are huge because we estimated that if it works, it will bring us billions of profit, not even revenue, but profit. So yeah, the perfect investor is someone who is ready to bet 50 millions. And of course, we would prefer, definitely, we want to keep our goal, because sometimes when you get investor, maybe you change, because when we talk with investors, often they would like us to maybe switch to some other application which would be short term, but that's not the point of the project. The point is to build biocomputer, which is long term and difficult. So we would definitely like that the investor would also like this dream to build biocomputer. So that's amazing. And
That
geographically, of course, we talk with investors from different areas. And well, we are open to think about this. We also are open to open the lab in another location if our investor will be from another area than Europe. So we are very flexible. It's here more the enthusiasm for the project, what matters, and of course the money.
that makes sense. Well, I'll give a little feedback here. I mean, I
Mhm,
think Silicon Valley would be a great place for this kind of thing. There are investors that are early stage investors that are willing to make big bets. And it also sounds like potentially a biotech type of an investor because they often have big capital and long term time horizons. And my
mhm,
only feedback would be the way investors will be is they'll want to deploy some capital and see some progress after a couple of years and then deploy some more. It's
mhm.
difficult to get one to write call it 50
Oh,
million check
yes.
for 10 years, but you know,
Absolutely, but we would prefer investor who could stay with us for longer, and of course, we don't expect to get all the money immediately. We have also envisioned some milestones, very specific. So yes, of course, but it would be better to find someone who has 50 millions. Then we can also divide this in steps. Like first step would be 10 million.
yeah, and I see some investors on X of all places, believe it or not, guys that are willing to invest in things that are a little bit different, that are more
Mhm,
trying to change the world as opposed to just quick returns. So you may find some guys on there. You never know. I see a lot of investors commenting on Elon on
mhm,
X, for example, as a place where you see a lot of these different folks. Of course, you have your standard tools like Crunchbase. You can find plenty of investors on there on
mhm,
Crunchbase that invest, early stage type
mhm.
investors. But yeah, I think you guys have an incredible big idea, and there's got to be people out there that want to do it because it would be world changing.
Yes, absolutely.
So I know in our industry, it would be a big deal to be able to have a bigger data center with less power.
Mhm.
That's always a big challenge that we face. So I know where you guys want to be in 10 years. Where do you think you could be in 2 years?
This is great question. So our first milestone, on which, well, not first actually, but the next one is learning in vitro. So that's a challenge. How to make neurons learn? Because also in our brain, when we learn, when we acquire new information or explore anything, then the connections between our neurons are rewiring. So they are changing. Some become weaker, another stronger. And this is how information is also preserved in the neurons. So we would like to be able to do this process also in vitro. And the first step in the 2-3 years from the investment to achieve would be this learning in vitro with some simple algorithm. And the next step will be advanced algorithm to match the performance of digital. And the last step will be scaling in a very simple way, scaling to make a big biocomputer.
So when you say learning in vitro for our non-science people out there, you mean inside a laboratory, you want to replicate learning where
Yes, absolutely. So we want to be able to change connections between neurons. So that's learning. And when they change connections, then they are rewiring, they work in different way. So that's how neurons learn.
how long does it take to learn? Is it instantaneous? No, or do you have to sort of do something repetitiously to be able to really absorb the information or learn?
Well, depends. For example, you can use feedback loop. This is something what I also mentioned before. We interact with the environment, we get feedback, and then we adjust our behavior. And you can also do this in vitro. So, for example, you measure activity of neurons. You stimulate neurons, you measure activity. If it's higher than before, then you give dopamine as a reward. If it's lower, then you give nothing. So this is kind of feedback loop which can go for hours. So sometimes you can try to teach, you can adjust the behavior of neurons for hours. But also when we look at our brain, we can see that, how much it takes to learn something. Yes, it takes a moment, maybe some repetition, definitely. But what is also interesting about brain is that it's possible to perform one-shot learning. This is a dream in digital because one of the big challenges of AI, digital, is a lot of data which is needed for learning. And actually, our brain can learn from one example. You see one cat in your life and one dog, and you already know the difference between cats and dogs. But for the dogs, but for the computer, you would need to give thousands of images.
Wow. Yeah. So the computer is not as efficient at learning as we are, is what you're saying.
Yes, definitely. We are able to abstract the knowledge much better.
I always wondered when you're small, for example, it's very easy to learn languages. When
Mhm.
you're small, let's say when you're between the ages of 0 and 5, it's very easy to learn
Yes, it's true.
languages.
I think it's a human biology. Yes, because that's also the time when we learn new language. However, it's not that we always learn better when we are children, because actually as an adult, a lot of things we can learn faster because we have background. We have a lot of experience and some context. So actually, there are many things which we can learn much faster when we are adult. But yes, languages, I think definitely are easier, and especially the accent, because I learned English late because I was very bad in English at school. I learned when I was 20 and I never pick up the accent. But I know if you start studying English when you're 5 as a new language, you get perfect accent. That's actually something which is remarkable that the earlier you start, then the better your accent. And
It's
later, I think,
remarkable.
but it's maybe something with the muscles in our mount, but still.
Yeah, it's very frustrating. I have a nephew who
Mhm.
speaks 5 languages, and
Mhm.
I'm trying to learn Italian, and just learning a little bit is very difficult.
Yes.
It's hard to remember.
Yes,
You see that?
definitely. Being young is a good time for learning languages. But actually, I forgot to mention one application, which is very futuristic, but we could hypothesize this. When we learn how to teach neurons in vitro, how to make learning, we could also theoretically be able to upload some knowledge into human brain. So that's one of the side. It's not our objective, but theoretically, if you can know how to teach neurons to get some knowledge in vitro, you could maybe do this also in vivo, but it's just possibility. Maybe one day. I'm sure one
That's
day it
my
will be
favorite
some way possible.
application. I think we can find investors for that one because that's amazing.
I think
It
many
reminds
people
me of
wouldn't
The
mind.
Matrix. You know, I'm sure you saw The Matrix where he's uploading into his
Yes,
brain. It's always been a dream, right, to be able to do
yes,
that. I know
yes,
there's a lot of guys out there that would love to have kung fu, like in The Matrix, uploaded to their brain.
absolutely. Be lovely.
So incredible. Well, Evelina, this has been a pleasure having you on Energy Superheroes. I mean, Final Spark. First of all, I love the name. Super cool. Like,
Thank you.
so many companies just have these weird names. At least this is something that makes sense for what you guys are doing, which is incredible. And sounds like you got an awesome team of 6 people. I hope there's some investors out there that'll give you guys a call, look you up, and we can talk offline about some ideas. For sure, this is maybe the biggest problem in the world right now. To be able to solve it it becomes a national security imperative too, I think, for Western
Mhm.
countries to advance in AI, because whoever controls AI, I think, has certainly a competitive advantage over the world.
Yes, this is
So it's a
absolutely
big
true.
deal.
Yes,
And as AI gets better and better, it's only going to need more energy if we stay on the current trajectory. And we didn't
yes,
mention how that can really be difficult for the average people because it'll drive energy prices up. So I think if you're able
absolutely.
to make it more efficient, like, that's a game changer. So
And
it's
also
been
AI, I believe will be more expensive in the future because now you still, I think, LLMs, they need more adoption, but once they will be adopted really well, I think they become more expensive. And the more we want to use it, the more expensive might be. And who will not use AI will have huge, huge problem because it gives you enormous advantage when you can use.
for sure. That's true. Can you tell the audience how to get in touch with you? I know maybe we found each other on LinkedIn, but how can they be in touch with you and with Final Spark?
Very easy. We have website finalspark.com. We have forms for people interested research, investors or press. There is also team section on the website with all our names and you can find email addresses also there so you can write to us directly. Of course, LinkedIn is also good. We are always there. So it's very easy to get in touch if any questions, any type of questions people have, we are always happy to answer or if people have ideas, suggestions is even better. And of course, we welcome investors to contact us. So yes, it's very easy to reach out and we always answer every message.
Very good. Well, Ewelina, it's been great having you on. This has been
Thank you.
Ewelina Kurtys, Energy Superheroes. She's with Final Spark, and she's working on one of the biggest problems in the world, which is how to make AI more efficient, going at it from the standpoint of biology and replicating what the human brain does with neurons. So, an incredible story, and we look forward to following up with you and see how you guys are doing.
Thank you so much.